Welcome everyone that's joined. I think we're going to wait just a few more minutes for a couple other people, but I'm Melissa, Program Officer for Global Ties Detroit. As many of you know, we connect emerging leaders from around the world with their professional counterparts here in Detroit. So while these programs are on pause, we're leveraging our local and international network to stay connected and informed throughout all of this. So we will be doing this virtual talk series on a weekly basis right now, with this first session hosted by Ferris, Global Ties Detroit Vice Chair and Small Business Expert. So if you guys have questions throughout the presentation that pop up, you can just type them into the little chat box, and Ferris will respond to them at the end of the presentation. So yeah, welcome again, and welcome Ferris. Thank you so much. We're excited.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone. And of course, it's exciting to be doing things with Global Ties Detroit, since it's an honor and privilege for me to be serving in that kind of capacity and being able to do such things. So thank you all. And to Melissa's point, if there's a question that you're eager and you want to stop, it's not meant to be like a one-way conversation. This is meant to be more of a discussion. So please, if you feel like you want to say something, please pop in and state whatever you like. So thanks for joining again. All right. Initially, I was going to spend a little time on this, but because I know it's 30 minutes, I don't know if we'll have enough time for it, but we could maybe go quickly because I think we have everyone now here. Just your first name and what's in your mind, rather than what city you're calling from, just what's in your mind, or what would you like to get out of today's session? Either one, just 2 questions. Your first name and what would you like to get out of today's 30-minute discussion? Just really quick. I have budgeted 8 minutes. I'm going to cut it down to 4 minutes. So I'm keeping the timer on.
Maybe starting with myself.
Anyone? You could either do it in the chat or you could speak through the mic.
I can start, I guess.
Okay.
Hey, this is Pran. I'm calling from India, actually. So I came to India for a meeting and have been locked in to the country. So I thought it'd be really valuable to hear about, just the different tools and the different, I guess, organized ways to kind of just sustain stuff from sitting abroad, especially while the business is located in Michigan. So, and how to even leverage an international network while here, and mine as well, kind of expand on business internationally.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Katrina says she would like to discuss, learning to pivot and refine business models to accommodate changing retail climate.
Just, what's the word for just?
Okay.
Anyone else?
My name is Misael Portillo. I have different hats, but this time I'm representing Yan Americas. I'm an IVLP, and Yan Americas is the Inter-American Network of Alumni Associations. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia, and we have chapters in different countries in the Western Hemisphere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't have to go through everyone, just maybe a few more. We're already at 2 minutes.
Yeah. This is Antoine. I'm actually calling in from Royal Oak and just wanted to see your faces.
Hi, Antoine.
Okay, we could move on. So thanks for calling. We're going to talk about, and I'm cutting this in half just because of the time. We'll do 20 minutes or so, some of the insights that I've learned from others in this process, and some of the insights I've learned through going through similar scenarios in the past. Every crisis is different, so you could never really copy paste anything, and every scenario is going to be different. So this will be more of insights of what you could think about to deal with what's happening. And we'll have, a few more minutes for question and answer, and I have a few links for resources that maybe could benefit some of the people on the call. And then we could talk about next steps or next things that can be done during such a crisis. So I'm gonna skip this because most everyone on the phone I already know, so I'm gonna skip it and talk about, what do you do during such a crisis and what do you do to recover it? Most of you probably already know this information. What I'm hoping to do with it is give you a new frame so you could look at it in a strategic way, as well as in a step way that could help you specifically overcome some of these challenges or leverage them to survive and go post the COVID-19. So one of the things that, as I hear people talk, some of the information is really more of a rumor than specific facts. So I would say to help sure that you plan it correctly, the first thing you want to do is verify any information. Don't take what you hear as a validation of any information unless it's a source that you trust or know, or you can trust or know now, or learn about now. And the reason I say that because there's just so many people out there today just posting and reposting and not necessarily accurate information, but more of opinion and someone's, saying it just because they want to say it, and the reality is somewhat different. So just make sure that you back up the information. The second thing that can be done in such a situation, and this is again, I'm going to talk about plan, then I'm going to talk about the steps, and then I'm going to talk about some action steps in between. Is you want to make sure that, as you already know, not worry about what you can't control. There are things you can't control. As an example, in Michigan here, you can't control that some shops were asked or demand to be shut down. You can't control that. If the state said you can't open, then you can't open. But you can control making sure that your voices are heard, and you also can control, maybe there are other ways that you could do business. Maybe you don't open the store, but can you do shipping? Can you do something else? So one of the things I'd like you to think about is, don't worry about what you can't control. The reality is what it is today. What can you do with what you can control to make it better for you or for your people? And the best way to go, to get over such a thing is, of course, you have to acknowledge that we are in a crisis. If you're still denying that this is not a crisis, I think by this point, most everyone is acknowledging it, and acknowledging it is somewhat of a challenge because you're basically saying we're in the middle of, something that I don't like to be in. But you need to acknowledge it so you could just get over that hump. And it's okay, I always tell people, it's okay to freak out. It's okay to be upset for a minute. Just don't act on that freak out or upsetness, and don't stay in that freak out mode. It's okay to be upset for a minute. It's okay to freak out for a minute, but then control that panic. Don't let it control you, and move to some actions that could help you leverage this time. And I love what a couple of you already said, that how can I leverage the network that I have now? What can I be doing? What Global Ties is doing right now, leveraging the resources that they may have. There are lots of things that you can do to really make things move forward the way you want them to go through such times. So I'm going to skim through a couple of these things because it's meant for more of a discussion, and this could keep this going for the next 2 hours. So we're not going to do that. So I'm going to just elaborate on a couple of points. When you are verifying information, just don't become a researcher because you are somewhat stuck at home per se. You might think, well, I want to learn more about this. If it's just the news, spend a little bit of time learning about it, but then spend more time learning what can you be doing with the information that you learned or the information that you already have. That's important. The other thing I would say is, as you already know, watch, where are you getting this information? How long are you watching it for, listening to it or reading it? Why are you watching it? And for how long you're going to keep doing it for. The reason I say that because it can be like, analysis paralysis. So one thing leads to another, to another, to another. So next thing you know is you're just in this circle and the whole day is gone, just you thinking through what's happening right now versus what you could be doing with what's happening right now. And then the next thing I would say with the information as you verify it, move forward with what you know. We already know that we're going to be in this scenario till April 31st as an example. Some maybe longer. Some, we already have some feelings that most likely till May, middle of May, end of May, somewhere June. So we know some things. So now can you act on what we already know, that at least for the next 4 to 6 weeks, it looks like it's going to be this way. So what can I be doing with what I got now? And as you already know, things can change, and they can change fast, because, you know, today you're allowed to move for grocery store shoppings or for necessities, but it could be that tomorrow you can't move, and now you have to deal with that new move. So set a schedule with the new things that's happening. Don't make it too firm, and just be flexible to accept what could change on you. I'm going to skip that. I'm going to talk about the, you know, the 3 steps that you could do to deal with what you got. So now we talked about first acknowledge it, you know, then come up with a plan, and then now we're going to talk about what steps can you take. So leverage what you already have, meaning most of you on the call today, I think, I don't know everyone, but I know most of you, you already have a strong network of people, organization, relationships, and so on. This is a time where you could revisit and reevaluate what can you do together, what can you do to support each other. And it doesn't have to be necessarily business, it just could be pure relationship building. It could be somewhat maybe to leading to a business, but it's not necessarily that goal, because this is a time maybe you could rethink some things that you were doing before. So that's number 1, leverage those relationships. You could also leverage new reach to people that maybe you've never reached before, because now you're a little bit more behind the screen. Maybe there are relationships that you have not leveraged before, or new relationships that you were hoping to cultivate. This could be a time to reach out. People will remember this time together, just like you would remember your school, or you'd remember your childhood, or whatever scenario. It's a period of time that people are together facing the same challenging issues and living the same time. People will remember that, and they could then relate to you in a new way that could build trust to do more business, or more, you know, strengthen the relationship that you didn't have or had before. So it's an opportunity to do that. And then, of course, we all know that we got to turn the challenges into thriving learning opportunity. But remember, you all have a purpose. And the question becomes, can you repurpose some of the things that you already have? Can you repurpose some of the network that you already have? Can you repurpose some of the new reach that you're going to go after? Can you do something that maybe you haven't done before, or do it in a new way? So those are the things that you might want to think about, steps you could do now to leverage the scenario that we're all stuck in. And then, of course, I always say, you know, you got to have to think like an entrepreneur, meaning, you know, your mindset has to be ready to accept new challenges as they come, deal with them for that day only. You can't really manage too much. So some of you like to plan for the next 6 months, 8 months. Unfortunately, at certain things today, you might have to just manage it for the day, or just manage it for this time being, and then adapt as things change. Please stop me if you feel I'm going too fast, because I could keep going and I could talk for hours, unfortunately. Or if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to start sending them towards Melissa or my way, and we'll spot them. If I see them, I could comment on them. Let's see, I see some chat, so I'm going to just open it. All right. So this is my final thoughts on the actions. Entrepreneurship mindset is really daily. You have to keep it thinking about today. What can you be doing today? And maybe for the week. Business is done differently today. It's not completely stopped. Some businesses are completely stopped, but there are some things that you can do to keep your name out, your brand out, your relationship out, so therefore it doesn't get forgotten. I said this to a couple of other people before, and it seemed like it caught on some ideas. which is we're still going through the storm. The storm is not over. We are in the middle of the storm. When the storm is settled, there'll be some more things to do. Excuse me, but for now, as we're going through the storm, there are lots of new opportunities that could arise from the storm, as long as you're open and able to change and modify the new goals and new expectations that you set for yourself. It's maybe not what we want, it's just what we have. So we could work with it. And the last thing I would say with these things is have a sense of humor, because if you don't, it's easy to get stressed out pretty fast, get burned out, or stress out people around you. So I would suggest to really think about having a little bit of sense of humor in some of these hardship scenarios that may be happening to somebody today on the call, or some of the people that we may know, or others that we are reading or hearing about. So having a sense of humor, without insulting anyone, of course, can help the scenario to be a little bit more at ease to overcome such obstacles. Now, I'm assuming you all have some kind of financials that you have to worry about. Someone wants to say something?
There's a question, but we can wait.
Yeah, we could, okay, we can wait, whatever you want.
Okay.
So, you know, you all have some financial responsibilities. And so one of the things I always talk about is when you're leaders, you have somewhat responsibilities of knowing the numbers. So we got to talk some numbers. I acknowledge that this is maybe not the hottest topic per se to discuss, but I think it's important in scenarios like this to understand the numbers. And the numbers today will be a little bit different than what they were a month ago or 2 weeks ago, or what they will be even a month from now. So one of the first questions you want to ask yourself, how much did I really lose in revenue? There are numbers that we think we lost, and there are actual real numbers that we lost. And I encourage everyone to really take the minute or two to write it down, to say, okay, how much did I really lose this last month, or how much potential I'm going to lose in April or May or June because of this shutdown. And you need to write that number down just so you could be aware of it and know it and understand it. Once you write it down, you could do some more things with it. So first, write the numbers that you lost in revenue. Then you need to think about what is your burn rate. And burn rate meaning how much cash do I have to be spending on a daily basis, weekly basis, or monthly basis just to maintain status quo. Maybe you have rent to pay, maybe you have payroll to pay, maybe you have loans that you have to pay, whatever that is. Just write down, and you might already have that number. That's great. Be aware of what it is. And then you want to calculate how long would this, how much is that dollar amount total over the next 3 to 6 months. So now you got two numbers, your burn rate, daily or monthly or weekly, whatever way you want to calculate it. And the second one is the number that you've lost in revenue generated over the same period. Then what would you like to do is think about bucketing them in categories that will make sense to you. Everyone's going to be different on this call. If you're running an association, is different than if you're running for a profit organization, is different than if you're running not-for-profit. So you have to categorize what are some of the priorities that you have to keep paying, and what are some of the priorities that you maybe don't have to pay today that you could maybe stretch and make it be paid later, or forgiven, or added to the end of the terms. So now that you know these numbers, you want to think about how much do I have in the checking account today, or savings or whatever, that I have access to that allows me to go through this burn rate over the next 3 to 6 months and stay in business, or be around. Can I stretch that number? And what I mean by that, let's just say you have $10,000 worth of debt on a weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever, okay? Now you could say, can I call any of these organizations and say, listen, can you forgive this debt, or can you move it to next year? Or can you take the $10,000 and divide it by 6 months and start 6 months from now? And the reason I say that, because that's going to give you more, I call it runways. So therefore you could keep taking off with your business without you having to worry about not having enough cash when things are this tight. So think about what can you do to stretch those dollars, and think about can you reallocate any of those dollars to do something different for you that maybe you didn't do before? Maybe you need a new technology piece. Maybe you need something else. Can you take some of those dollars that you saved and reallocate them somewhere, so therefore it could help you stretch this period of 2 to 3 months of doing something different that you normally would have not done? And then reallocate the staff. Maybe the staff is working on certain projects. Can you reallocate them to work on other projects or other things that maybe were on hold, or other things that maybe could help you once this period is over? I acknowledge that that's not possible all the time. I'm just saying when it's possible. I just want to make sure I'm respecting the time. Okay, good. So with that being said, I kind of covered some of this stuff here, which is divide up your losses, if you could do it over 3 or 6 or 9 months, or can you move some of it to at the end of the terms? If you have a lease or if you have a loan, can you ask them if they stretch that loan to be, if it's 30 months today, can they make it 36 months later and then just move these 6 months out so you don't have to make payments now? That could help your cash. Or if they have to take that 6 months, and can they divide it up over 3 months or 6 months or 12 months? So therefore you make more payment on a monthly basis, but yet fulfill that payment. Now I acknowledge that everyone will work with you, but many probably will. And know that you have to accept that this is, happening everywhere, because what you're facing or what you might be asking someone to do, they might be having to face the same. So you have to find, a common ground. You can't just force what you want on them, because they might be in the similar scenario or maybe worse. We don't know. And I would suggest one last thing, which is think about what can you do to generate some smaller revenue now if you can. Sometimes you can't. Some of these businesses are shut down, and it's by the state law you can't open or operate. That's understandable. Then you can't do anything about it. But if you can, and you got a permission and you called the hotline and they said, yes, you could do this, then think about, can you start generating new revenue? It doesn't have to be the same. It could be a different new revenue, a different new model. Even if it's a smaller amount, that could just help you create some smaller preserve dollars. So therefore you could keep the cash that you have to a little bit longer time before you have to spend it, because you bring in new dollars in. One of the people I was on the call with yesterday, now they used to be in manufacturing. Now they want to manufacture things for medical. Now that's an easy transition. Another person was doing wholesale. Now they want to do retail. That's also an easy transition. Sometimes it's not as easy. So you have to think through what can be done versus what you can't be doing. And the good news is this is the time when it's a storm going, a lot of people want to help. And a lot of organizations want to give in, hands, or they want to help support you some kind of way. And acknowledge that it's not as easy as it sounds. I personally, when I went through and talked to many, a few hundreds of people applying for some of these programs, I know the frustration that they went through, because you apply today and then they have a new form the next day, and now you have to apply again because that old form is not valid anymore. And then you've hit submit, and then the next day they have a new form now that you have to use this form if you want to be considered. It's just part of what happens when these scenarios that we're in is a crisis mode. So everybody's going to be acting in different ways. And unfortunately, like I said earlier, you have to acknowledge it, and then you have to accept that it's going to change and be able to, move with it as it changes to continue moving. So this is a short list of different places. At our website, we have a whole dedicated list. It's on the top. We put a banner up there. You could click on it and it gives you more resources. But the state has lots of wonderful resources. And I'm assuming no matter which state you're in or country, there's similar scenarios to this. You just have to probably search the term COVID-19 with the right terminology of, economic development organizations or the city government organization or the state funded programs, and there will be some programs there. They're all in different stages, meaning some are more advanced than others, but they usually, all of them so far have had something going on in this reference. I'm gonna stop because we could talk about this for the next few days, but I will say this, entrepreneurs and leaders see things that most people don't see, and they go after it in a way that most people don't. And while it might look dark and not the right moment, it's always the right moment when you nurture it, watch for it and have a system around it to make sure that you really follow up on it. I'm going to stop right here so we can take some questions and thoughts. Thank you very much for listening and thanks for joining.
Thank you, Faris. So we do have a couple of questions. Marion would like to know, what are the most effective strategies for continuing to connect and communicate with our customers, clients, or constituents, even if our operations are currently closed?
Yeah, so I say it's a tough dance because while you want to maybe do business, some other people maybe are not ready for it, and as well as maybe not ready to do business. So I think keeping kind of like what you're doing right now, just other ways to just keep the name out there, making sure that people know what you do and stay relevant to the scenario today, leveraging the resource that you have, and then building on new relationships, because maybe there's an organization today that deals with leaders in their communities, local leaders. Maybe you could reach out and see what other programs are they doing there on a local level that you could learn to do with the local leaders that you have in your network. Maybe there's a best practice of having leaders do certain things within the communities in crisis mode. That could be new information that could be distributed to all the leaders that are connected to Global Ties Detroit. So these are some of the ideas and thoughts that could potentially lead. So the first thing is just write it down. What are the resources that you have today? Then you might want to think about what resources or information could be useful to others today. And then can we be the intervener or the person or the organization that could facilitate this information? And that could be one way to do it. There are lots of ways, but this is one way. Yeah. And I'm sure lots of other people on the call could probably pitch in with this idea.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So during this crisis, do you have some best practices or lessons that you've learned specifically related to how you might change how you do business when the pandemic is over? So like employees working from home or, reorganizing around less travel, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of these things I've learned personally through living through a couple of other similar scenarios or war times and crisis times. But I also, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, I've been talking to lots of leaders from around the world, from California all the way to India, actually, and China, and everything else in between. And these are the things that I learned from talking to them, and I put it in a framework. So therefore, because they might have just said it, not realizing it's the steps or certain things that they followed, and they're just acting on it. And therefore, I've put it in a nice frame to say, okay, step one, okay, let me go ahead and acknowledge it or whatever we discuss, and then let's move on forward. So if you want to pivot, unfortunately these days, and one of the comments was, pivoting, what should I pivot to, or what can I learn to pivot to? It's being forced on you. It's not like even an option, right? Before you question what opportunities do you have, now you have no choice but to figure out a new opportunity, unless you don't want to do business anymore. So you have to explore what is happening today that you could leverage what you got to add value to the market. Now, one thing I would differentiate, if I had hand sanitizers today and I started selling them for $5, that's not leveraging what I have. That's taking advantage of the situation. Leveraging what I have, meaning I have maybe resources that could make these hand sanitizers. Can I make them available to a new segment that maybe I didn't have before? And not raising the prices per se, but really going after it, I said the right way of understanding, maybe this will help me open up a new door that I didn't have before. So leverage what you have as far as resources to open a new door. I don't know if that answered your questions, Melissa.
Yeah, it did.
Actually, I was wondering if I could just jump back to Marion's question, just as a suggestion of ways to continue connecting for Global Ties specifically. I think it would be very interesting using the network that we do have to create, if not like these Zoom type of things, maybe just a video, which we can reach out to the emerging leaders or the professionals from different countries, specifically from various fields. So if we connect to like public health professionals that have once come as delegations, how each of those countries are dealing with the issue there, then the like economic leaders from those specific countries, how they have been dealing with the repercussions there. So just kind of like, if it's not a Zoom like interactive video, maybe they can send in a video and we can create the content to put out there, just to hear new perspectives of how everyone's dealing with this around the world.
I love it. So 1 minute from each one, positive things of what they're doing in their communities to overcome COVID-19, right? I mean, many of them, that 1 minute is easy for them to do on their phone or whatever. Just 1 minute, tell us what you're doing positively today to come, you know, to fight COVID-19 or to keep your communities moving during this crisis. That's a great idea.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? You can either type them into the box or probably just unmute yourself, either way. I think we had another one, but you think you kind of answered it, Ferris.
I know it's 2:30 and we promised 30 minutes, so, but I'm
Yeah.
happy to stay on. I budgeted initially 45 minutes to an hour, so I'm happy to stay for those who want to stay on, but you know, wanted to make sure that I'm respectful for everyone else's time.
Yeah. Maybe just briefly, you listed the resources for business relief. Could you just kind of really briefly talk about how you would advise prioritizing all the different support available?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I would say, from just my own personal experience as well as working with many leaders that going after these kind of resources, one is create a new folder in your desktop or server or whatever that basically will house this information, because most likely you're going to need the same information multiple times for different institutions. So in the US, you know, in Michigan specifically, your tax returns for the last 2 years, business and personal, your payroll, your rate, you know, your rent, you know, general administration fees, you're going to need these things categorized because they're going to ask you for those things specifically. Once you create that folder, then you could maybe create subfolders or folders within that folders, one for city and county, the next one is for the state, and the next one is for the federal. And the reason I say that, because each one of these organizations offers something sometimes similar, sometimes different. And I would always start local, because local is usually, if they recognize you, know who you are, they most likely will support you. Then I would go after to the state, and then I would go after the federal. But don't let any of them not be seeing you, okay? If it makes sense. Some of these resources are not gonna make any sense to some of the people on the call. So you have to think through them. So for this is resources for employers and employees in the US. So in this one specifically, they're talking about, you know, how to help employees transition. And if you have to do in the state of Michigan, there are multiple programs on that, and how you could sign up for it. The World Health Organization, this is just a site to help you just see what else is going on around the world in this specific, to keep track of coronavirus. And they have some like helpful hints on how to keep safe. Michigan Economic Development Corporations here basically is doing a couple of programs. Some of them are grants, some of them are loans, and they're channeling them now through their local partners, the counties specifically, and sometimes the city economic development agencies. The Detroit Small Business Fund, this was specifically done in Detroit. It was more of a grant, and now I'm seeing it actually, it was done in Seattle initially, and it was copied after Seattle. I'm seeing them popping up in almost every other city. Like in Ann Arbor, they have something called Ann Arbor Small Business Stabilization Fund. So it seems like it's an idea that's catching on, where other people are doing something similar. These are usually up to $5,000 in grants, and usually targeting underserved communities that are basically being hurt the most. And the other links are just different links that could help you learn how to manage your cash flow. And then the SBA Disaster Loan Fund, they have a couple of loan funds. Some of them are grants up to $10,000. Then they also have the PPP, they're calling it, which basically pays 2.5 times roughly your payroll, your rent, your general administration fee, like maybe your phone bill and so on. So if your burn rate is $10,000 for the week, they'll pay you 2.5 times that. So therefore you could keep, paying people for the next 2.5 periods. And you have to spend it from the day that you get it within 8 weeks.
All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we are at the half-hour mark. So thank you again so much, Ferris. And thank you everyone for joining. Everyone that's listening right now will be doing another session on April 15th. The topic will be diplomacy and the Foreign Service. So stay tuned for more information around that. Something just popped up in the chat box. Oh, okay. And in the meantime, everyone stay safe and healthy. Thank you again, Ferris, and everyone take care.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. If anyone has any thoughts or ideas, please either put it in the text or unmic and unmute yourself and speak up, because I think there are lots of wonderful people here that could maybe add to this discussion.
Yeah, we're talking. A couple people right now are talking about leveraging the international network that Global Ties Detroit has to learn about what other people are doing right now. So yeah, it's a great idea, and I think that's what we're going to continue doing. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
All right, bye.